Cola. Coke, pop, soda, whatever it is you call it. If you're anything like me, you probably grew up hearing that Coca-Cola and Levi's were how the West won the Cold War. That it was basically just our beloved capitalist goods that swayed the Soviets and showed them the light. And there is a good reason why people always identify it as being Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola throughout the Cold War was just sweeping across the country, across the planet. So much so that other countries kind of had problems with it from time to time. Australia and France used to refer to it as Coca-colonization. They objected to it based on partly cultural thing, these Americans and their soda coming in and trying to replace our national beverages. But also, all that beverage money was going out to another country. That's not great for a country's economy. Still, everyone liked that soda. Even the Russians. Now, our story starts in 1959 in the middle of the Cold War. Tensions are super high. The United States and the Soviet Union are just locked in this ideological arm wrestling match that involves nuclear threats and space race and a really stupidly intense game of let's see who can ruin the planet first. And into this high-stakes global drama walks Richard Nixon. At the time, Richard Nixon was still vice president. He found himself in Moscow at the American National Exhibition, which was kind of a political trade show. It was supposed to show the Soviets what they were missing by not embracing the joys of capitalism. Kind of a flex, a sort of Soviet version of Keeping Up with the Joneses. Hey, come take a look at all of our consumer appliances. And that's where Nixon had his famous kitchen debate with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. Now, this was no calm, scholarly exchange of ideas. No. This was two men arguing about politics in a model kitchen, debating whether communism or capitalism would win the world in the end. Actually, it's not a lot different than going to Thanksgiving dinner with your conservative uncle and your hipster cousin. You know what it's like. Now, Nixon knows this guy named Donald M. Kendall, who is a political advisor, but he's also an executive at Pepsi. Kendall is a clever guy. Kendall sees an opportunity and he recognizes an opportunity. And he saw an opportunity in this whole trade exhibition. He recognizes a lot of opportunities. He's the reason that we call Diet Pepsi instead of Patio Diet Cola. Not a good name. Good choice on calling it Diet Pepsi. But anyway, he wants to send a vending machine for Pepsi Cola to this trade show. And his other executives are not down with it. They think it's going to be a lot of money, a lot of hassle for absolutely no payoff because the Soviets had not been big on communism. They didn't think that it was going to happen. Kendall says to Nixon, just do me a favor and get a cup of Pepsi into Khrushchev's hands. Just in the middle of the debate when things get hot, just get a cup of Pepsi into his hands. And Nixon did. There is actually a famous photo of Nikita Khrushchev and Richard Nixon. Nixon is handing him this paper cup of Pepsi. And Khrushchev tastes it, decides, okay, this is better than communism. He wants to buy Pepsi and distribute it throughout the Soviet Union. But there's a problem. They don't have enough money to pay for it. Not nearly. What they do have, though, is vodka. They don't have plenty of money, but they got plenty of vodka. So, they make a trade. Pepsi for Stoli vodka. And Pepsi becomes the sole distributor of Stoli vodka until, I think, the 80s. They go along, and this is doing well for them. Russia's getting their Pepsi, Pepsi's getting their vodka. Then comes the Soviet-Afghan War. People are protesting. They don't want to buy Russian products, and even though Russia does have some more money now, they can't trade the ruble anywhere. If Pepsi had accepted rubles as payment, they wouldn't be able to exchange them. So they're stuck. But the Soviets have a new offer now. They're going to pay not in cash, not in gold, not in vodka, but in decommissioned military vehicles. They paid for the Pepsi with 17 submarines and a cruiser and a destroyer and a frigate. And that made PepsiCo the proud owner of the 6th largest navy in the world at that time. Pepsi was totally able to win the cola wars against Coca-Cola if they were willing to resort to perhaps unethical means at that point. Of course, the United States government was not thrilled about PepsiCo owning an entire navy. The National Security Advisor for the first Bush administration, Brent Scowcroft, had complained and said, "You can't own a navy." To which Kendall came back saying, we're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you guys are, right? This new deal with the Russians didn't just pay Pepsi with their military vehicles. They also opened 2 Pizza Hut restaurants in Moscow, owned by PepsiCo, and another one was planned. Things were going well for good old Pepsi. At this point, they had to, because while they had an exclusive deal with the Soviets, Coca-Cola had an exclusive deal with China, so it all ended in 1991, though. The Soviet Union collapsed, and with it, so did PepsiCo's exclusive deal. Without exclusivity, Coca-Cola swung in there and quickly began to dominate the market. But Pepsi had a good run while it lasted. They spent a while capitalizing not just on the Stoli vodka, but marketing the fact that they were in the Soviet Union. They ran these ads that basically took credit for the modernization of the Soviet Union. As for Pepsi's naval vessels, well, they sold them. The oil tankers went to Norway, and the decommissioned military ships and submarines were sold for scrap to a shipyard in Sweden. It didn't last very long. But, like Camelot for one brief shining moment, Pepsi was the owner of the 6th largest navy in the world. Thank you for joining me for another Whispery History.